Damashii. So sorry about that. I was having some really weird technical difficulties with my computer. But thanks for sticking around. Whoever's still here, you guys are all awesome, and I really appreciate you sticking around to listen to my radio show and hear me talk about electronic dance music and stuff. So anyway, last week I was very bass heavy, a bass heavy episode because I was preparing to go see Excision, um, and man, oh man, what an amazing show it was. I just it's yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Excision again for such a long time, because it had been a while since I last saw him, and Excision always brings a really good time, no matter where he is, no matter what time of night he comes on. So I went out there, and like the visuals were definitely, they lived up to the hype. I had been watching all these videos of other stops on the tour, and yeah, those visuals were insane. The sound was insane as well. It was a pretty enclosed space. So it was like 150 watts of sound or whatever it was that they were advertising it. Yeah, and I mean, the whole building was shaking, and you could feel the vibrations through your feet and stuff. It was pretty crazy. And then he ended his show by opening up like this ginormous mosh pit, and it opened up like basically all the way to the front rail, and everybody was just going crazy and moshing, and just yeah, it was a really good time. And then the next night I did ooh, excuse me. The next night I went to another rave. I went and saw Cosmic Gate, which was like the exact opposite of Excision type music, and it was like really nice and trancy and um like soothing. But Cosmic Gate actually went a little harder than I'm used to hearing from them. And so in essence, I went hard, like raving 2 nights in a row, and I wasn't smart about it, and I totally forgot to ask my boss for the next day off. So I had to go to work the next day, and I was so sore, and I was hurting, and I was tired, and I didn't have any energy. So my boss ended up letting me go home early from work that day. And it took me like over 2 whole days of just laying around in my bed doing nothing, for me to recover from all of that. So yeah, that was pretty crazy. But that was last week. This week, we have a show this week on Flow Arts. So I'm really looking forward to that. But before I go into that, I'm gonna play another song for you guys. This is Dimension 7 by Eptic. All right. And once again, that was Dimension 7 by Eptic. And you're listening to The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii on MSP Waves Radio. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm just gonna read off the names real quick. I see Ann Coppola's in here, and Kryptonic, and Daryl Sprout, Dorth, Kodax, Mackenzie, Gary, Menno, Mogati, Pensif, Fedizzle, Rondon, Simgirl, Soundwaves, Photon, and Valued Customer. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys being here. Alright, so tonight I decided to talk about the flow arts because when I was at the Excision show last week, and then again at the Cosmic Gate show the next night, people that saw me dancing and stuff were like telling me that I need to put on gloves because so a lot of times, like especially in like a more enclosed setting where I can't really move my feet around too much, that movement ends up in my arms and my hands just kind of like start doing these gloving movements, and people see me and they think that I'm like serious glover status over here, I guess. And so everybody tells me like, oh, you need to like put some gloves on and like get to gloving and stuff. And yeah, so I decided to start talking about the flow arts tonight because that happened to me again, and that's been happening to me, I should say, ever since I went to EDC last year. It started actually when I went to EDC. So I had always thought that gloving was just kind of like this cool thing that people do. I never really understood the whole like flow art aspect to it. I thought it was just like, oh, that's cool. People are playing with lights, and it's cool to watch and cool to look at. But it wasn't until I was at EDC, and my friend Vince, who I met at EDC, he gave me like the most mind blowing light show I had ever witnessed in my entire life. Like, it was just insane. And at first I thought I was just like tripping out like really hard because he was giving me this light show, and then out of nowhere it seemed like he had like sprouted a second set of hands, because there was a second set of hands like off to the side doing things in sync with him, and then out of nowhere this third set of hands pops up. And so what had happened was, I guess, Vince started giving me a light show, and then the second guy jumped in, like was doing it from behind me, and then this third guy came in from the side and was doing that, and all of them just like meshed really well together with the music that was playing. It was 7 Lines, by the way, and it just completely blew my mind. And that was when I got like this, I don't know, newfound appreciation for gloving and for the flow arts. And so after that, I went to Global Dance Festival the next month, and I was just kind of like dancing and doing my own thing, and then during Porter Robinson's set, it was like super crowded too, I guess, and so I just kind of started like dancing, and next thing you know, my arms are moving and my fingers are going all over the place, and this chick and her boyfriend that sees me, they're just like, yo, where are your gloves at? And I'm just like, Look, I'm not actually a glover. I'm just like moving my body around right now. I have no idea what I'm doing really. But they were like, super encouraging, and they're like, yo, you really need to like put some gloves on because that looked really sick. Whatever you were doing, I thought you were like a legit glover. And so like that was a huge compliment for me, and I was just like, oh, well, maybe I will like look into it and look into trying this whole gloving thing. Mackenzie Gary asked me, I saw Porter Robinson live. What was that like? Oh man, it's amazing every single time. Mackenzie Gary, like, Porter Robinson is one of my favorites of all time. That show in particular at Global Dance Festival, he was having some technical difficulties with his equipment, and so he actually stopped his entire set for like a good 5 minutes or so just to talk to us, and like he was giving this like really long and heartfelt apology to us about like how he really wanted to give a perfect show to everyone, but but the equipment is like, preventing him from doing that. And he was just apologizing profusely to the crowd for like a good 5 minutes, and it was really human of him, and I really loved that about it. Let's see. So where was I? I was talking about gloving and stuff, right? So, yeah. So after global, it happened again at DOS. I was at DOS Energy here in Utah in August, and people were like, people around me, I guess, while I was dancing and stuff, and moving my hands, are like, "Yo, where are your gloves?" And so everybody just kept on asking me about gloving, and I'm just like, "Yo, I'm not even a glover. Like, I'm just doing this random thing with my hands, you know." So finally, one day, I decided to buy a pair of gloves, and I was like, you know what? I feel like enough people have told me, something about I need gloves this, I need gloves that, for me to actually like, look into it and pursue it, and try to learn it for real. So yeah, I got myself a pair of gloves, and yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a really cool journey, because I've been like, as I've like progressed, and as I've learned like these different techniques and stuff that glovers use, I find that I'm like kind of learning things through osmosis sometimes, like things that aren't even like related to the move, or you know I guess the move that, that I'm trying to learn, the technique there. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, like, I don't know. I feel like the more I practice it, like the better my flow gets, every single time, and like my hands start moving even more liquid like, and it's very flowy, and yeah. Anyway, um, yeah, I feel like I've been talking for a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and play another track for you guys. This is just Saiyan by Datsik, and that's Saiyan spelled like Dragon Ball Saiyan. All right, everyone. Again, that was Just Saiyan by Datsik. And yes, that is Saiyan like Dragon Ball Saiyan. Yeah, you guys are listening to the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii on MSP Waves Radio. Thank you so much for being here and for tuning in. So as I was saying, um, as I was saying, oh god, I can't stop. um, anyway, so I was talking about flow arts, gloving specifically for me because that is my preferred flow art. Um, yeah, so I was talking about flow arts, and there are so many different. And then there's also like this light on a string type of thing called an orbit. And people, do stuff with that all the time too. Let's see. Well, a really popular one is hooping. Um, People get crazy with hooping. That's yeah, it's another fascinating flow art to watch. Honestly, I mean, honestly, all the flow arts are fascinating to watch, really, because it's just the the just the fact that the person you're watching has engaged in this like flow state, and they're just they're not even like really thinking about like where they're moving next, or what their next move is. It's all just flowing. The music is flowing through them, and that flow is affecting the movement of their body. And that's something that's always fascinated me about flow arts, because each one, each flow art is a very distinct form on its own. But there is definite All right, everyone. Once again, that was Spirals by Illenium. So, we were talking about flow states and stuff, and I was going over like how I got into it and how I started getting into it just last year, actually. And so I like the entire time that I've been involved with the rave scene, going all the way back to like 2009 um, time period. I never really thought that I'd ever get into gloving. I never really understood gloving back then. It was always just like, I don't know. It was just always a cool thing to me. It was like one of those like, oh, that's cool kind of thing that you just like, you go about with the rest of your day to day life, and you're just like, yeah, that's cool. Not that I didn't care about it. Like I said, I always thought it was cool. It's just, yeah, it just never, occurred to me that I myself would someday embark on that flow journey. All right, such a classic track again, everybody. That was "Raise Your Weapon" by Dead Mouse. All right, so tonight we've been talking about flow arts, uh, and I've been talking about my own personal journey into this flow art stuff. And eventually, eventually through my explorations into flow arts, I eventually came to two key realizations about flow for myself, which I think everybody else that I've spoken to about who is like well versed in flow arts, they tend to agree with my realization. So um, the first one that I came to is that everyone has access to the universal flow field. It just manifests in a different form for everyone. Meaning, not everyone will be a glover, not everyone will be a hooper, or poi spinner, or glow sticker, whatever the case may be. Um, Everybody accesses this universal flow field in a different way. It manifests differently for different people, basically. And then the second realization that I came to is that newcomers to the flow art should not get too hung up on All right, everyone. Again, that was "Music Is My Drug" by the Tweakers. Thank you guys for tuning in. I see that Sir Lunch, the host, has joined us. Thank you for being here. Let's see, where was I? So, before I started playing this music, I was talking about the universal flow field. Um, and so this, like, it's funny because I thought that I came up with that term on my own. It was just I started talking about this universal flow field, right? And then I come to find out that that's an actual like known term that people actually use to refer to this universal flow field that I'm talking about, that flow, people into the flow arts access all the time. And so there's this book, actually. It's a really excellent book that I think everybody should go check out at least. It's called Stealing Fire, and it's by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheal. And it talks about, it's a lot of like mind hacking kind of stuff, and but the basic premise of this book is entering into flow states to achieve like optimal success in life. And I thought it was really fascinating because they actually they did like these studies and stuff, and studied people who engaged into who entered into flow states, and documented like all these similarities, and they're basically trying to pinpoint it and study flow states. And so one of the things that their research produced is that all the flow states, all these flow states, which in their book they kind of refer to it as transient hypofrontality. Super scientific, I know, but basically they're saying that all these flow states have four signature characteristics to them, and they came up with this acronym STIR, which is STER, or selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. So, talking about this whole selflessness thing. For selflessness, going back to this this term transient hypofrontality. Transient means temporary. Hypo is the opposite of hyper, which means less than normal. And so frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that generates our sense of self. During transient hypofrontality, because large swatches of the prefrontal cortex turn off, that inner critic comes offline. And this inner critic, again, is that voice in your head, which I mentioned earlier, that like is constantly over analyzing everything and wanting to process every little bit of data that comes its way. So without all the badgering, then we get a real sense of peace. This peacefulness may result from the fact that without self-talk to stir up the negative emotions, the mystical experience is free of tension. And with that tension out of the way, we often discover a better version of ourselves, more confident and clear. So that is the selflessness aspect of the flow state, meaning that when you enter into a flow state, you kind of lose your sense of self. You stop thinking of yourself, and you stop, all the anxiety goes away basically, and you're not constantly thinking a million thoughts here and there, and you're just letting things flow through you, and you're entering into this flow state. So the next letter, T, stands for timelessness. And with this timelessness, it talks about how everybody that enters into a flow state also experiences this aspect, timelessness. Because our sense of time isn't localized in the brain. It's not like vision, which is the sole responsibility of the occipital lobes. So instead, time is a distributed perception calculated all over the brain, calculated more specifically all over the prefrontal cortex. During transient hypofrontality, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline, we can no longer perform this calculation. So we're not worried about, time anymore. We're not worried about like how long this is taking or whatever. And we're not we're not thinking about the future or the past. We're just kind of here and now. The book goes on to say, without the ability to separate past from present from future, we're plunged into an elongated present, what researchers describe as the deep now. Energy normally used for temporal processing gets reallocated for focus and attention. We take in more data per second and process it more quickly. When we're processing more information faster, the moment seems to last longer, which explains why the now often elongates in altered states. So again, when you're in a flow state, you tend to lose track of time. You lose a sense of time, I should say, not track. You lose your sense of time because you're so engaged in this eternal now of whatever it is you're flowing, whether it be gloves or poi or hoop or whatever. You're just in this state of flow. And so, none of that time stuff matters. You're not worried about tomorrow or yesterday. You're just in the eternal now, and you're just flowing in the now, which is always really, really amazing. Okay, and then the next letter is E for effortlessness, and it's kind of sounds, I don't know, it kind of sounds bad because it kind of sounds like I'm saying like you don't have to put enough effort into the flow, but that's not quite what it means. So. Excuse me, sorry guys. Like I said at the beginning of the broadcast earlier, I'm kind of sick right now, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, so let's see, effortlessness. So in flow, when you enter into flow state, these 6 powerful neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, dopamine, endorphin, serotonin, and anandamide and oxytocin, they all come online in varying sequences and concentrations. They are all pleasure chemicals. So, these flow states that we're in are some of the only times that we get to access many of them at once. So the biological understanding or underpinning of effortlessness is that I did it, it felt awesome, and I'd like to do it again as soon as possible. And so basically what that's referring to is that when you enter into a flow state, all these chemicals get released, and your senses are heightened, and your excitement is on point, and it feels like an effortless endeavor because you're hopped up on all these chemicals that are like increasing your your serotonin levels and stuff like that. And it's just, instead of it feeling like work or like this tedious task that you're doing, it feels fun and exciting, and so therefore effortless, because so your sense of self disappears, your sense of time disappears, and then your sense of putting in the work, essentially, I guess is the best way to put that. Your sense of putting in the work also disappears, and that's effortlessness. And so the last thing, the last part of flow is R, which is richness. And so with richness, an ecstatic experience often begins when the brain releases norepinephrine and dopamine into our system. These neurochemicals raise the heart rates, tighten focus, and help us sit up and pay attention. We notice more of what's going on around us, so information normally tuned out or ignored becomes more readily available. And also, in addition to that, information that normally we're not like thinking about processing, such as music and the way it moves our body. And then, besides simply increasing focus, these chemicals also amp up the brain's pattern recognition abilities. That's very important for what we're talking about here with flow states and the flow arts. So they amp up the brain's pattern recognition abilities, helping us find new links between all this incoming information. And so, that's the richness aspect of it. It feels like, that just, I don't really even know how to explain it, honestly, but it's just a really rich, like, immersive experience for you that you just kind of dive into, and that's how you get into flow, basically. And so with that, I'm gonna play one last little track again before I open it up for guests, because I just feel like I've been talking for a while. So anyway, everyone, here is Turbulence by Steve Aoki. All right, everyone. Again, that was Turbulence by Steve Aoki. And you're listening to The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii on MSP Waves Radio. And it is about that time of the night for me to bring on some guests. I do have somebody that's been waiting in the waiting room here. Let's see. Let me check in with him. Actually, before I do that, before I begin this segment, I do have to remind you all that MSP Waves Radio and its owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show host or their guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the radio station. The material on The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii is provided for educational and informational purposes only. All right, and with that, let's see if my guest can hear me. Let's see, Garrett, are you there? Let's see. So
Yes, I am here.
awesome. All right. So everybody, this is my friend Garrett. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. For all of you guys, Garrett, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and talk about like how long you've been raving and stuff like that.
Well, so first off, my name is Garrett. Okay. Uh, Commonly, I'm called Ferret, which is my nickname. I had the nickname initially Ferret Lordo, right? I was given that name from an old gloving team that I was on. Uh, Due to the fact that I have five ferrets, so they called me Ferret Lord, and it eventually, shortened itself down to just Ferret. Um, as for how long I've been going to raves and stuff, so I went to my first rave when I was about 13, 14. It was here in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was one of the most interesting things I've ever been to. It wasn't like a giant, normal sized rave. It's kind of like a more inclusive, small setting rave and stuff, and it was my footstep into the whole world. It was a lot different from what I was used to at that age because I was 13. I was at home playing, Diablo 2 and Guild Wars, but my buddy was like, "Hey, dude, you want to come with me? Like, this is cool stuff. We can go shuffle and we can dance, whatnot." So, I was hesitant at first, but as soon as he said there was house music, I was like, I'm totally in for it. I love house music. Eh, I once I went to that rave, like it was just something so new to me. It was so lovely. It was comforting to be there. I was a weird child myself at the time. So, being in this room with a bunch of other weird children was just like, it was a whole new experience. It was, somewhere I could feel normal being surrounded by, other people that are, we get classified by the world as, either delinquents, even though we're not delinquents, or weirdos, creeps, whatever. It just was an accepting world to be in. So from there, I started connecting with different people that are going to these raves, and I started going to new ones every weekend. In the rave scene out here in Chicago at the time, it was awesome. It was fun. You kind of like knew everyone who went to the rave, which was the best part about it because you had such a connection with everyone. It was like a giant network, and there wasn't a person there that they weren't judgy or anything. They were free to express, free to accept, free to just be who you wanted to be yourself. Be if you wanted to. Even there were people that would go to raves and cosplays. There was people that were going to raves and whatever the hell you wanted to wear. So it took me by grasp at first. Eventually, I started going to more and more raves as the years came on. In the mixture of the rave scene, I started going to festivals, which is mainly where I'm at now. um so I do a lot of festival hopping from time to time, but with having a kid now, those days are kind of gone. But from within the last, I want to say, what, 11, 12 years now, I've gone to probably more than I could count, or I could even remember. But every single one, it just shows me, within the rave community itself, it was just it's a beautiful place. It's somewhere where you can go and be accepted by a community of people where if you feel alienated by the world, it's a place that doesn't make you feel alienated. You're free to express your art, your flow arts, you're free to express who you are, what you want to be. You're there with some people that are, they may seem different or farther paced than you, but everyone's in a giant collective and they all look at each other equal. No one's better than one other person. And I think that was like an additional huge key point that played a huge interest in, my vision on the rave scene itself. So with all of that, in a whole, it made me who I am today. I would say it's an experience that will stick with me because I don't think that if I didn't start going to these raves and parties back then, I don't think I would be who I am today. And I personally don't think I would be as open minded as I am today. So to me, it's a miracle. I mean, it's sometimes it's not a miracle for everyone, and don't get me wrong, it's always situational. But to me, it was a miracle.
Right. I wish it could be a miracle for everyone. Wouldn't that be nice? Like I
If only we lived in a perfect world, my friend.
Yeah. Like I know I tell all my friends that like they need to experience it at least once in their life, like just to see for themselves, cuz it's not really something that you can like explain to someone. I mean like you can, but the true understanding won't actually come until that person has like immersed themselves in that experience for themselves.
Nah, you have a point. It's entirely true. There's no doubting inside that.
So, let's see. What about why don't you tell us like your favorite raving memory?
Um, I would have to say, so there was this complex. It was a soccer arena, all right, and this company out here threw parties at it. It was kind of like a back to back weekend thing. It wasn't every weekend, but it was basically a soccer stadium with multiple soccer fields in it, but it would be rented out for parties on the weekends and stuff. So they hosted raves there. Now what it involves, the memory involves one of my exes, and it's actually how I met her. Uh, so there I was, I was sitting in kind of like a little soccer cubicle type thing, whatever those huts are called on a soccer field. Uh, and I remember I was sitting there and I was having a pretty intensive time. All right. It was pretty intense, and I'm sure people could understand what that means. And I was sitting there and I felt a little bit lost. All right. I was, getting in my head and stuff. And I have this obsession with Mexican rice water, horchata. And so it's like one of the things that if I'm ever down, a horchata will turn my world around. Let me tell you, it's like, but as I was sitting there getting lost in my head, my ex actually was, I didn't know her at the time, but she had walked over to me and I was like this little strange kid. I think I was like maybe 16, probably 16, 17. And I'm sitting there and you could definitely tell I was spun out of my world. Um, and so I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of like having a little inner panic attack type of thing going on. And she comes up to me and she, asks me, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" And to be honest, I'm going to tell you right now, at that time, I still wasn't used to random people coming up to me and just talking. To me, it was just a whole new thing. I was 16 starting to learn that world. Uh, but she came up to me, asked me how I was doing, all that stuff. And she could see that something was going on, with me. And she had way more experience with me in these type of things. Especially, in like a rave setting and stuff, because that's what she grew up on in Tennessee. When she moved out here to Illinois, she grew up on that. But I just remember her saying, "Hold on, I'll be right back." She comes back with a horchata, but not with just a horchata. She comes back with her entire group of friends, and they all see that I'm having a rough time, and to me, it shows a lot. First off, if you're going to bring your friends over because you see I'm having a rough time, that shows a lot right off the bat. But uh, at first, my initial thought was I was panicking. I was like, "There's people around. There's people around. What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And next thing you know, they're all just trying. They're trying to comfort me. They're trying to, make sure I'm okay. And I'm sitting there in my head like, why are these people doing this? Like, don't they see there's like some spunion in front of them? Like, don't they think I'm crazy? But no, these people were all accepting. They're like, we know, we understand, stuff happens, like you just got to write it out. And they're all telling me, positive affirmations, trying to get me into a better place. And it was working, but I was still having that inner panic freak out. And so what they did was, they were holding my back and stuff. And then the girl, my ex, she ended up taking my hand and saying, "Look, come with me. We're going to go get some fresh air." So they all ended up sitting outside with me. They brought me outside to the back, and they all actually sat there for about a good hour or two. They could have been partying, they could have been having the time of their lives, but no, they decided to take me outside, sit with me, and comfort me to the point where I felt okay.
There really are, good people out in this world. There's still good people in this world that genuinely love and care for their fellow human beings. And I love that so much because that's not the narrative oftentimes that we get from, like, the mainstream media and whatever these external stimuli
Without
that we're
a Yeah,
exposed to.
without a doubt, dude.
All right. Before I move on to my next question, I'm gonna play a song for everyone so that we're not just talking for a whole hour. And yeah, and I need to drink some water actually. So this is Chakra by W and Vinny Vici. If I can get it to play. All right, everyone. Once again, that was Chakra by W&W and Vinny Vici. And you're listening to The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii live on MSP Waves Radio. We're live right now with my friend Garrett, who's been talking about his raving experiences. And so now that we've had a nice little musical break, so tonight's episode, the theme for tonight's episode is flow arts, Garrett, and so you're like the perfect guest to come on for tonight's episode since you are very well versed and skilled and talented in that field. I guess why don't we start off this segment by talking about how you got into gloving in the first place.
All right. So let's see. So I want to say, so I've been gloving for probably 8 years. Yeah, I want to say about 8 years now. And so at first, before I gloved, okay, background to this on how it came up to be in my life. I was a shuffler. I started shuffling when I was like 11 and 12. Like I saw shuffling, I was like, whoa. But shuffling was incorporated, into the rave scene because it was, it was a good place to shuffle. It was, all that jazz. But because of that, I was in a shuffling group, and we actually had a guy. We had a guy that gloved in our group, and this group was, we were the Midwest Shufflers. So it spanned from Wisconsin down to Texas, and this guy lived in Texas. And post a video on YouTube and post it in our little MySpace group. Can't believe it was on MySpace, guys. But he posted a video, and I was like, "What the hell, dude?" It was the most trippiest thing I've ever seen. At the first time I saw it, the trippiest thing ever. He was gloving to Dash Berlin, and I was grooving. I was having the time of my life watching this video, and I was like, "You know what, dude? I want to learn this. I want to get these gloves. I want to learn how to do this stuff. This looks awesome." So it was 8 years ago on my birthday. Okay. My parents were asking what I wanted, and I was like, yo, I want a glove set. I want you to hook me up with that coral reef glove set from Amazing Light. So they got me a coral reef set, and it was like my favorite colors. It had like a nice ruby red with some light blue and some coral green in there. And to me, that was like, it was majestic. I love those colors together. It was amazing. But from there, it just took off. Like it started at the finger rolls, and now I'm at where I am today, where it's just, yeah, everything is just, I can't even say like I have a skill arsenal that's specific in one thing, but I just learned so much in such a short time, and I just worked on it. And I can say this, like, you will never learn everything about gloving because there's just so much to it. It incorporates, liquid dancing, incorporates finger digits, tutting, it incorporates isolation, popping, all that kind of good jazz. But I just spent hours on hours. I would be doing it in the hallways at school. I'd be doing it at work. I'd be doing it free time, everything. I was dumping in dollars, all my paychecks, into different lights, different bulbs, different batteries. And then when they started coming out with like the programmable chips, I was just like, take all my money. Like it was a dream, man. I don't even know how to describe it other than saying it was the most beautiful art form I ever was able to lay eyes on and be part of.
Right. Yeah, that's I know what you mean because that's how I feel about it now after like I mean cuz my story about that crazy light show I got at EDC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that.
that to me was the moment that I like saw the beauty of gloving and like I don't know, it just made like a really lasting impact on my life and that's why like after that I was like okay, maybe I should like look into gloving and check it out and stuff. So for yourself being someone who's invested so much time and money over the years into, you know, like really honing your art, and your craft. Would you say that it's like, for someone like myself who's a beginner, would you say that it's more important to get the flow down first, or is it more important to get the techniques down first?
Um, I want to say it's 100%. Um, I'd like to say it's situational, depending the people. Because it actually plays a lot with how your mind is when it comes to your style and like learning how to glove. It's so let's just say you're like most optimistic people, okay, people who think outside the box, they pick up on flow very naturally. It becomes, of course, it's going to be a little stiff and looking like a PowerPoint, slideshow in a sense, kind of thing. But eventually they pick up on flow very easily. And flow is, it actually comes from your body. It's how well you're in tune with your body. Because once you're in tune with your body, you're able to control, the way your joints are going to be positioned, how the rest of your ligaments are going to be moving with, the rhythm. So me personally, like when I go to teach people, I always say, look, we're going to first learn your flow. We're going to see how you are. We got to see if you're going to move like a robot or if you're going to move like water. It starts there. And once you're able to understand like how you flow, you're able to then learn what techniques to learn first. Because if you're more into a techie kind of a person, so you're not all about the flow, but you're into like understanding, the geometric field of things with gloving, you're going to go straight into tech work. You're going to start learning, tech work techniques, tutting, boxes. You're going to learn that kind of like stiff movement type of stuff. But if you're a person that works how they see the world in orbs, as I say, you're going to be a person who's going to like master their whips first. You're going to master your finger rolls, your liquid. You're going to master, your body movements a lot quicker than you were to learn tech techniques. So, overall, it is going to be very much based on how or who you are as a person.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm part of that second group that you just mentioned, with like getting all the finger rolls and like whips and stuff out of the way. Cause I still like, there's just so much to learn. You're right. I mentioned earlier in the show how daunting it all was for the longest time when I first was getting into it. I didn't know where to start, and like there were so many things to, to choose from, essentially, to pick which things I wanted to learn first. And tutting to me has always like been very, um, it looks a lot harder than, I mean, it probably is very hard, but it looks a lot harder than it probably is, maybe. And so I've never like, I still have yet to branch into like looking into learning all of that stuff. And right now I'm just focused on like getting my finger rolls, like, so-called perfected or whatever. Just getting the flowiness out there.
It takes time, my dude. As long as you put dedication and perseverance into it, my friend, you will get there. But always keep in mind, there's always room to improve.
Indeed. Yeah, that's definitely something I have to keep in mind. I feel like for new people anyway, it's easy to like kind of hit a plateau with gloving and learning these things, because of like the nature of how challenging some of these techniques are. I feel like, for a lot of new people, myself included, when we've learned something in particular that we were struggling over, we tend to like take a little break from picking up anything new for a while, because I don't know.
Ah, the Glover's block.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. I've been there a few times myself.
Yeah. So it's All right, everyone. Again, that was Game Master by Lost Tribe. You're tuning in right now to the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii on MSP Waves Radio. I'm DJ Damashii, and with me right now on the air is my friend Garrett, who has been raving and gloving for years and years, and he's really good at what he does. And so, Garrett, we are coming up on the end of the show here. Like I said, the title of my show is The Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. And so I make it a point to ask all my guests this question. And so, I guess now's the time for me to ask, what are your dreams in life, my friend?
My dreams. Oh boy. So when you mean dreams, like where I want to end up in life eventually?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. What, like, I don't know, what the ideal world you'd be living in, and like what role you played in the creation of that world, kind of stuff.
Um, I've always had one goal my entire life. And it's pretty simple and most people laugh at it, okay? But I've always wanted to I just wanted to end up owning a tea house. I just want to have my own tea house that, is it's nice, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's kind of, got this zen theme going on. I just want to brew tea for people. I love tea. All right. I wish I could just brew tea for people all day long, but that's what I would want to do is, have my own family tea house. And my fiance is like huge into baking. She loves to bake. So we were thinking, like, when I told her about this dream of mine, she told me, why don't we just, eventually own our own tea house but offer a bakery inside, because who doesn't love tea and, bakery goods. And we wanted to end up having it in Oregon or Washington because they take use of medical, cannabis. And me being a person who has multiple sclerosis, I'm also allergic to opiates. Cannabis to me it's my life savior. There's a lot of potential within that alone, and I don't want to get in depth on that topic because I could go on and on and on and praise about it to the gods. But it saved me because with me being allergic to opiates, I can't take pain relievers and stuff, and you can make use of medical cannabis within tea and bakery goods. And I want to offer that kind of homey good feeling to others. I want, because it gives me pleasure just making sure people have peace and relaxation in their life. And that's what I want to offer because it makes me happy when other people are happy and when they're enjoying life. Because when I see people hate their lives, it irks me. It gives me like this deep pain in my chest when I see it, because you've been there for a couple times when I hated life, and like I'm sure you understand how that feels to see like friends go through that, and it sucks. So I want to give that to everyone, and I think that would be where my dream ends up, where I end up in that kind of a situation that it's a win-win for everyone.
Right. That's that's a really nice dream, dude. Like, you started it off saying it's kind of funny and like people kind of laugh at you for saying it, but I just wanted to say, like, as a friend, and a natural byproduct of that happiness in our own lives is we're able to share even more happiness to the other people that we meet and encounter out in the world. So, yeah, dude, good on you for having a vision like that, and I hope that I hope that you get to carry it out and have that awesome little like tea shop and bakery with your fiance and your family.
I'm definitely open on that, 100%.
All right, so we are coming up on the end of the show. Garrett, is there any like last words or closing parting comments and words and stuff you want to say before we got to close this out?
I've got two things. All right, just two things. So the first thing is I'm going to request if you can play one song to close this out, and it's one song that means a lot to me and a lot of my close friends. I don't know if you're able to work that magic or not.
So I won't be able to play it tonight because the way the music selections work is I have to run all these songs that I play on the air through like a database or whatever so that the radio station can get money to the artist. And then yeah, and so if the song isn't in that database, then we're not supposed to play it on the air.
All good, all
yeah.
good. That's why I asked. Now the second thing is I've got to ask you, because I've never asked you this. What is your dream?
Oh man. Oh man, that is that's a pretty hefty question to ask me in the last like 2 minutes of my show, Garrett. So I'll tell you what. I'll talk about my dream on my next episode of my radio show to make up for not being able to answer your question right this second. How about that?
All good, fair with me, my man.
All right. Well, this is the end of the 7th episode of the Dancing Dreamers with DJ Damashii. You've been listening to me, DJ Damashii, and my friend Garrett over here. And so I just wanted to say thank you everybody in the audience for tuning in tonight. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for chiming in and providing some input whenever you did. And I do just wanted to say thank you again to Global Cop and Rondon and the station managers at MSP Waves Radio for allowing me to have this show and for supporting my efforts every step along the way. And with that, I leave you all with the same song I end all my shows with. This is Ordinary Life by The Prophet. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. See you next week.